Hello there everybody, it is me XfreezerBunny and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. So after almost a year, I am so happy to finally be back with another CC build, and this time we are building an Italian Renaissance villa. Now when I say Renaissance, I realized that in some places, particularly in the US, a lot of people tend to associate the Renaissance period with like the medieval aesthetic. I'm talking about like Renaissance fairs and stuff. No, this is the actual Renaissance that was inspired by the classical traditions that were revived during the 14th and 15th century. As you all know, I am a huge history buff, so I will try to control myself in this video as much as I would like to make this a really educational rant about my passion for history. I'm gonna control myself because I don't really have a lot of time for this build. Speaking of that, I think this build is going to be split into 2 or 3 parts. This is still a work in progress at the time of recording, and I have no idea how long this is going to be. It could easily go beyond that as far as we know, because as we all know, CC builds tend to be very detailed, and I'm not going to skimp out on the details for you guys by editing, the build to the point where you can't really see me focus on all of the little details, so I will be splitting this into multiple parts. Hopefully it'll be done by 3 parts, because I don't really want to make this, another month, 2 month long speed build like last time. But I hope you're all in for the long haul. Once again, I usually like to do these CC builds at least once a year, and I usually like to do them around the same time, around March, April-ish. If you guys remember last year, I did a little Baroque Palace mini-series, and yeah, this time we're doing a Renaissance Villa mini-series, I guess. So yeah. If you have any suggestions and feedback, please let me know so that I can incorporate a lot of your suggestions in the future episodes, if I like them. No promises though. This build was actually heavily inspired by a real-life palazzo, the Palazzo Farnese, specifically the little house in one of the gardens in Palazzo Farnese. I forgot what it's called actually. I believe it's called the Little Pleasure House in the, sorry, not Palazzo Farnese, Villa Farnese, which is the gigantic, like, octagonal, crazy building. It's still insane thinking that they built that in the Renaissance, but people were daring that time. But yeah, that building actually has a cute little pleasure house in one of their gardens, and that was the one that was mainly inspired by this build. I think that one was actually used in filming locations for a lot of like really big movies. I think that's where they filmed the exteriors for Romeo and Juliet, the 2014 movie written by Julian Fellows, if I'm not mistaken. But another huge inspiration for this build was the house from one of my favorite gay movies ever, and that is Call Me By Your Name. I absolutely love that movie. I cannot underestimate how much I love that movie, and I just am so excited to finally do a build that had somewhat of the vibe of the house from that movie. So yeah, you're probably gonna recognize some things. It's not a direct recreation of the house, because I wanted it to be more of my style, but you can definitely see some influences from that movie as well. I heard they were doing a sequel actually. I don't know if that's true, but I would watch anything that has Timothée Chalamet in it. But yeah, if you guys have seen some of my previous CC builds, you'll probably recognize some things. I feel like this build definitely has some DNA from my Parisian Chateau build, as well as from my Uptown Terrace builds. If you saw those 2 builds, you'd probably recognize some, recurring features that I like to have in my builds. And actually, I did make a playlist of my CC builds. If you guys are interested, you can go ahead and check that out. I will leave a card for you guys to click on if you want to get redirected there. But one revelation I had discovered while I was doing this build was how well the wallpaper from the Country Kitchen kit worked with a lot of the Felixander and Harry CC. I'm just like, what? this looks too good. This wallpaper is seriously like CC quality, and I'm not trying to be shady or anything, it's just so good. I was actually shocked at how good it was. I originally thought of using the wallpapers from my wedding stories, but as you all know, I'm not really crazy about that wallpaper. I like the swatches. I wish they made a version that can be, you know, tileable on multiple levels. I wasn't really keen on the fact that that wallpaper specifically had like a little molding at the bottom. I thought that limited the use for that wallpaper, but you know, it is what it is. It's a beautiful wallpaper. The colors are stunning, and I'm definitely going to be using it at some point in a future build. But in this build, I was really shocked at how well the country kitchen kit wallpaper worked. So yeah. Also, I feel like this build would work really well as a wedding venue, so that's mainly what I was working towards for this build. You could also live in it actually and just delete all of the wedding related stuff, but I did keep in mind the whole, you know, romantic wedding venue set in Italy type of vibe. I just am so happy with how it all came together. There's definitely quite a few grand staircases in this build. There's one inside, but there's nothing that can top this grand staircase that leads to this sunken garden. Now you won't see me do the garden in this video because I'm saving that for the last part. I usually save the landscaping till last once I've done the interior because I don't want to have to change the landscaping if I need to change the interior. Simple as that, but you can have a pretty rough idea of what I was going for as far as the landscaping is concerned. If you saw my last build, yeah, you can probably have a little bit of an idea. I'm gonna go for like a formal garden type aesthetic. So yeah, I hope you all look forward to that, but right now we are just focusing on pretty much just laying out the plans for the gardens, and then we can come back to it in the last part once we finish everything. But I definitely wanted to make sure that there was an aisle in the garden that was long enough for the bride to have her, you know, grand entrance type thing, and that staircase is definitely one of my favorite things I've ever done ever, so I'm really happy about it. And yeah, this build also has a little tower. Wasn't originally part of the plan, but I felt like the exterior was a little bit plain. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because that tends to be what Italian architecture is. A lot of the shapes tend to be very boxy and simple because of the climate actually. But yeah, I wanted to add a little bit of extra detail. This also kind of similar to the tower they had in the house from Call Me By Your Name. So yeah, I just wanted to have a little bit of an extra little detail over here. And it really just changed everything. It made everything look so good. I'm really happy with how it all came together. And also those roof tiles from Jungle Adventure look so perfect with this build as well. They just came together so nicely. I had the same problems with the back. I thought it was a little bit flat and plain, so I added this kind of like Baroque-esque pediment type thing with these side scrolls. So yeah, some really interesting little details in this build. Really though, if you haven't seen my Parisian Chateau build, I highly suggest you check that out. That's probably my favorite CC build I've ever done. I've done some bigger builds using CC, but I think nothing can top the Parisian Chateau. Interestingly enough, that was also the first like build I did using Felix Sander CC. So that's that. I built that way back in 2019, by the way, and that has so many similarities with this build. Like the layout is very similar, but yeah, also a lot of things changed since 2019, and one of the things that I'm really happy has changed is the staircases, because if you guys remember when I did my Parisian Chateau build, we didn't have the ability to actually change the shape of the staircase, so I had to be creative when I wanted to, you know, do like a more unconventional shape for the stairs for that house. And yeah, speaking of this house though, you'll see that I definitely used quite a lot of classical elements, a lot of archways and vaulted ceilings and classical orders, which is quite typical of Greco-Roman architecture, which in some way was revived during the Renaissance period. Yeah, I've actually been obsessed by this one channel recently. Actually, it's not recently. I started watching them during the Olympics last year, but there's this one channel called Told in Stone, and they kind of specialize in creating content about Roman history and culture and art. And yeah, I've been so obsessed with them. I started watching them when the Olympics was a thing because I wanted to learn a little bit more about the classical Olympics, the ancient Olympics, sorry. But yeah, just putting in some extra little pediments and columns, no, sorry, pilasters over here inside to, you know, give it kind of more of that Renaissance vibes. I would have loved to have had like a vaulted ceiling where the ceiling itself had ceiling paintings, but unfortunately none of the existing ones fit the space, so I ended up using Felix Sander's vaulted ceiling that came with his Florence sets. The Florence set is gorgeous, by the way. I highly suggest you guys get that, because yeah, this build would not look the way it is without that set, just saying. Of course, towards the end of this build, I will be posting the list of CC. If you guys know a way to list down all of the CC I use, please let me know, because every time I list down all of my CC manually, there's always like people complaining in the comments that I didn't list down the complete list of CC, which is kind of sad, but so yeah, if you know a better way to list down the CC, please let me know. Maybe a more foolproof way. So yeah, I think at this point the tray importer is probably the best option for that, but you know, maybe some of you guys know some secrets. I also used some of the beautiful frescoes from the Georgian set, I believe, because Felix and Harry came out with quite a few fresco wallpapers. I think one of them came with the Florence set and one of them came with the Georgian set. I believe the one I used here is the Georgian set. And yeah, that should give you guys a pretty good idea of what we're going for in the interior. But I think that's a good place to wrap it up right here. I hope you all enjoyed it. And yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. You all have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you guys in the next part. Bye bye.